lawyers, we very often come across various tips and tricks with regards to credit cards, loans, mortgages, other finance arrangements, as well as standard contracts that these companies probably don't want you to know about. So in this video, one such tip, if you like, with regard to credit cards that might well save you lots of money. But if you're interested in more general discussion on money management, and wealth creation, why not check out my sister channel, Black Belt Secrets, linked in the description below, where I'm going to do a whole series on the use of credit cards for your benefit, because as it happens, I'm also a qualified mortgage advisor. But that's not to say that anything on this channel or Black Belt Secrets amounts to legal advice or financial advice. They're all just guidance for reasons I've explained a number of times. So welcome back to the channel, but if you're new, I'm a barrister who helps you to understand law. So if you have a credit card, you will obviously be aware that there is an interest rate attached to that credit card. The interest that they will charge you for borrowing money from that company. What you might not be aware of is that the company has a legal right to change that level of interest to be applied not just to future spendings, but any borrowing and any debt that is already on your account. However, the tip here is that they must give you at least 30 days notice of any change to that interest rate. The real tip, however, is that you can reject that increase in interest. The only thing is, in doing so, you will obviously be deciding to leave that credit card company and go with someone else. So there are a number of things that come into play if you decide to reject it, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. So just as a brief recap, the credit card company can choose to up the interest rate at any point that they choose, but they must give you 30 days notice of doing so. If they do that, then the new interest rate is going to apply to all of the existing debt on the credit card and any current and future spending. If you reject that interest rate, then you have 60 days within which to do that, and you have 60 days before which your account is going to be closed. Then what happens if your account is closed? Well, obviously there still exists a debt with the credit card company, and you will be repaying that debt on the existing rate, not the new rate, but then you have to decide how that's going to be repaid. Now, there are a number of ways of doing this. One very simple way is to find an alternative credit card provider that might do a balance transfer at 0%. They might even do it without a fee, although most of them charge a fee, usually 2% or something like that, as a fixed fee to transfer the balance to them. Many of them, however, will do a 0 fee and 0% for so many months or whatever, so that you can transfer the balance to them, and then you've moved yourself from the old credit card provider, rejected the interest rate hike, and gone with a new company at a more preferred rate. But if you don't want to do that, and you don't want a new credit card with a new company, you can, of course, take out a personal loan to repay the debt that's on that credit card, which is likely to be at a lower rate because loans are typically, not always, but typically at a lower rate than credit cards. I would always, of course, urge you to look at the small print and the fine detail and seek financial advice if you want to look at all of the costs entailed in taking out a loan and affordability and all of those kind of things before you actually do any of this. But that is another option that you can do to repay the debt on that card. The other thing, which is a little bit of a grey area, is that you can discuss with the existing credit card company to repay the existing debt on that card. Now, they must give you a reasonable amount of time to repay that debt, not necessarily the 60 days, after which your account is closed. The debt still exists and you do have to repay it, but they must give you a reasonable time to repay it. However, there is not a specific set of rules as to what defines a reasonable time to repay that debt. Obviously, if there's a dispute about it and it ends up in court, there's going to be a question of fact as to whether or not the amount of time was given to you to repay that debt is considered to be reasonable in the eyes of the court. Let's say, for example, they say to you that it's got to be repaid immediately and it's accrued up over a number of years and you've been a loyal customer for a very long time. The court might well take the view that immediately after the 60 days is not a reasonable amount of time and they should give you a reasonable amount of time, which is obviously longer than that. On the other hand, if it's a relatively low balance and you're asking for a long time, say 5 years to repay this, and you're a relatively new customer, the company might obviously say no to that and ask that you repay it in a much shorter period of time that they consider to be reasonable. But then either way, there might well be a dispute over what period of time is considered to be reasonable. But I bring this up as a tip in this video because many people just think that you have to stick with that company and that interest rate and that there's nothing you can do about it. But obviously, if you reject it, then you don't have to continue with that company at the new interest rate, but you do have to sort out the existing debt, because that debt doesn't just go away and you have to repay it one way or another. As an aside, you will obviously have to go through all of your online accounts or anywhere else that you've got the credit card linked to make sure that none of those payments bounce, because obviously the card will cease to be in effect after the 60 days and the account is closed. Also, if you decide to pay the balance immediately and you've rejected the increase, then typically your card will be cancelled immediately and your account will be closed immediately. So again, you'll need to look to an alternative card payment for all of the online accounts where you previously used that credit card to make those payments. And obviously, if the company does decide to increase the rate, they have to write to you to tell you that they're increasing it and when and why even, and how much it's going to cost you and how it's going to affect you and what options you have. They might well give you a repayment plan as a standard if they do increase the rate. But either way, and if not, it is better always to discuss it with them if you do want to discuss a repayment plan rather than just leave it to chance. And of course, I would suggest that you don't simply ignore it. And just as a final warning to recap something that I've already said, if you don't do anything about it and you don't reject the new rate and you don't make arrangements to repay it, and the company does increase the rate, then that rate is going to apply to all of the existing balance and all existing and future spending on that card. So please make sure you don't ignore these things. The head in the sand approach absolutely is not the best way forward for whatever situation you are looking at, whether it's legal, contractual, financial, or whatever. Ignoring a problem will almost certainly always make it worse. And as I said, if you're interested in more general discussion on finance and money and how to use these cards to your advantage, they will be much better placed on my sister channel, Black Belt Secrets, linked in the description below. Please head over there and subscribe. I'm just about to hit 60,000 subscribers on that channel, and I'll be very grateful for a few that push me over that 60,000 threshold. In the meantime, please remember to like the video and subscribe, and thank you for watching.